Hey guys, it's Penelope in London and I'm doing part 4 of Carl Jung's chart. I've done 3 videos previous to this, so just look at my playlist and you'll see 3 videos before. I did firstly the sun and the moon. If you don't want to run through that, I'm just going to show you. I did his Aquarius rising in the first part 1. I did the sun and also the moon. And then what I did, the next video, I looked at Mercury, Venus, and Mars, and also went into Jupiter. And then yesterday I did a video which was Saturn and what did I do? Saturn and also Uranus and Neptune. So today we're doing Pluto and we're doing the North Node. So I'm going to fill you in on what this means. So with Pluto in Taurus, you can see Pluto, this is generational. So, you know, here it would have been there from 1852 to 1854, Pluto would have been in Taurus. And Pluto takes 248 years to move around the chart. So we have what's called generation, the generational. For instance, I'm Pluto Virgo. I was born in 1966. And I do chart work. So if you want me to guide you in understanding your Pluto and your North Node, which is your path in life through symbolism, then I'm able to assist you. And I also work reading with Jung. I read his work and I look at Pete Walker, which is to do with complex PTSD. So I'm multitasking on what I do, but this is something that I find chart work is a really healing tool. And also Carl Jung used it with people in practice as well. Symbols are just a brilliant way to understand ourselves. So with this Pluto in Taurus here, we can look at the trauma of it as well, which is very fascinating because Pluto is where it's way below the surface or below the subconscious. We don't really know, you know, what may be what we're working with, but we can understand with the house it's in and also the sign it's in. But the other thing is that Pluto is very much worked through Mars, which is to do with, if you read Jung, our libido. And libido is just not about sex, it's to do with our energy, it's psychic energy. So it's where we have a impulse, and our impulses can be driven by Pluto, like, you know, the unconscious. And when Jung talked about the archetypes and the collective unconscious, you know, I very much would see the outer planets as being, in part, that imprint that we have. There are things that we just know, and those are psychic imprints, so to speak. But it's much deeper than that, but I'm giving you an idea. So the other thing is with it in Taurus, this generation, you know, it was about going through economic change and also the ability to transform material production and monetary, you know, the way the money was working. And with Pluto in the 3rd house, there is a strong mind, like a very powerful communicator. And you can see that even though if we think the Red Book, like that was held in a vault, that wasn't supposed to be public, it wasn't for the public. When Jung was working on the Red Book, he was going through his own transformation, which is very Plutonian. It was below the surface, you know, that he was bringing forth. He was putting the information in a black book, which are just about to come out this year as well. And then he would transfer what he wanted to from the black book into the Red Book, which is a beautiful piece of art. It's a work of art. I'm just so pleased that his family allowed that into the public realm. It's such a gift to humanity. And then, you know, there can be power, because it's in the 3rd house, which would traditionally be Gemini and communication. I don't want to confuse you, but it is Pluto in Taurus. It's where there's also a power struggle with siblings, and that, you know, siblings don't have to be, you know, just our blood siblings. We can be looked at in many different ways. And then let's look at what this Pluto, you know, is doing for him here. If we look at it, it's basically, let's see, Pluto is in opposition to his MC up there. Let's just see that. Yeah, it's in opposition to his MC. And Pluto is also squaring his Saturn, which I did yesterday. So you can look at the video yesterday to understand what that aspect means there. And I'm going to read a little bit more about Pluto in a moment after I've done his Chiron. That's the other thing I'm going to do, the wounded healer. It's our hypersensitivity, the wound that we come into this world that's imprinted upon us, or, you know, like an arrow that, you know, maybe through us that really pierces us, you know, our wound that keeps reoccurring until we fully understand it. And with Chiron in Aries, there's a sense of being violated in some way, and there can be fears of asserting ourselves. And there can also be where we can be overcompensate by attempting to want to be first and the winner, you know, so to speak. And physically, you know, there can be head wounds with that. So you can maybe find out if you had any early head wounds as a child, you know, like any falls or anything. But also it's where one becomes a pioneer in the way in which they're of service to humanity. And currently, actually, we've got Chiron moving through Aries in the collective astrology chart at the moment. Chiron is currently in Aries, which is fascinating. So with Chiron, again, he's got it in the 3rd house. And this is where, you know, and he did have, it was painful experiences in early schooling. And he's, you know, suffered problems with early communication, which he did. If you know, you look at his work that he talks about, his biography and such, he speaks of that. It's also where he may be able, you know, it's communication and experience, becoming a wounded, so it's like becoming a teacher, helping to people to communicate better, that's what he's done, because he's given us the ability to understand the anima and the animus, which is the anima is the feminine inside the male, and the animus is the masculine inside the woman. And he explained to us how to look at our shadow and how to integrate that. So all of this here is, you know, completely works with what we know about Jung, his chart. And then the other thing is that his Chiron is conjunct Neptune. I did that yesterday as well. And then we can look at the aspects. So he's got, you know, Chiron to Mars, that this is in groups of people. You know, this is powerful symbology. The North Node, which is in his 2nd house, and again, it's in Aries. It's where one is very assertive and self-empowered, and they can also need to be first. There's this other thing of, you know, again with the Chiron thing, it's a need to be wanting to be first at things, which he was as well. You know, he was the first person he invented, you know, with it pioneered psychoanalysis. And this is where one needs to discover their own identity and also to initiate their own projects, which he very much did as well. The North Node, also in the 2nd house, is about personal values and learning to leave the past behind and to earn our own way through life. So whilst he married into money initially, I do believe through, you know, the work that he did, that he turned that around and he began to earn his own money. And that's also in the history that we know of the work that he's done and the books that we can read about him. Now, what I'm going to do is explain Pluto, that I do evolutionary astrology. So this is really important, that Pluto is our main player with the North Node and the South Node. North Node, this life, South Node would be past life. And here, this North Node is in 2, we can see that, but the Pluto is in 3, so, or in Gemini, so it's going to be one in the other, but his is in Taurus, as I've told you. So this is about where we have watertight intellectual constructions that define not only these individuals' sense of reality in general, but the very core of their emotional security. So this is very much based on, you know, the security around intellectual constructions and unraveling, you know, through intense experiences. So the Red Book would have been of, you know, very intense experience. When we look at that bulk of work he did, there was very intense communications and cataclysmic as well events that forced him to change his way of thinking. Like, for instance, when he fell out with Freud, you know, he would have been pushed out of that society, and that would have been a very difficult time for him to be sort of, you know, pushed aside and people not sort of looking up to him, but he was, you know, had a brilliant ideas, and clearly his work has really paid off. Like now, in the times we live in now, it's so popular. So the cataclysmic events with the Pluto in the third house change us, and they help us to change our way of thinking. So this can be in transit as well if you have this. But the emotional trauma here is intense intellectual confrontations. And funny enough, that reading at the moment Murray Stein and The Map of the Soul, which is to do with Jung and his life and understanding, he does talk about confrontations are really important for the development of the ego. Like without confrontations, if you think of a child, you know, the first couple of years, you know, there's the natural narcissism. It's all about the child and me. And also we get the unconditional love. And then when we go beyond that, we begin to have confrontation. You know, we get the first no, you know, we have to follow rules. And through these intellectual confrontations, which maybe aren't so intellectual when we're very small, but they become that way, we develop the ego, and we can develop a healthy ego. So this is where people did do with him. They poked holes in his, you know, way of expressing and thinking. And he had no choice as a result of this to question his own belief systems. So that would have been very, you know, traumatic for him at that time. And also he would have had to look at his nature of his own reality, and any assumptions that he would have had to question them and look at his intellectual work and look to where he needed to change. And also this would have caused him, you know, possibly insecurity and instability, which it did, because it, you know, he speaks of it in the Red Book. It clearly pops up there. And then it's also when, you know, Pluto's going through that house, you know, we're going to look at the stressful aspects, because that will point more to what was really going on for him at that time. So this is deep work. I'm glad I've got to this point in the chart anyway. This is video 4. My next project will be at some point putting a whole video together that's really just going to give a one, you know, long video of his entire chart, and then adding in the evolutionary astrology that I understand to be, so it's more fruitful to somebody just to watch the whole thing. But do go back to the other videos, and if you need my help, then please feel free to contact me and book a session with me. I'll catch you later. Thank you so much for watching.